group, so we're gonna go ahead and start it. Hello, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us here today. I'm so excited to be able to talk to y'all today and talk to you, our audience out there in Facebook land. So we'll go ahead and kind of get started. My name is Sarah Morley. I'm the Youth Engagement Specialist at Denton County Friends of the Family, meaning that I work with young folks primarily ages 15 to 21 about issues related to violence prevention and education on healthy and abusive relationships. And so I'm here with some of my awesome youth ambassadors today. We'll introduce them in a second, but first I'll kind of want to give y'all some details, some like reasoning. What is the Youth Ambassador Program? What do we do? What do we spend our time doing? How does it work? So essentially our Youth Ambassador Program is a brand new program. It just started a couple months ago, and it's for young folks ages 15 to 21. And essentially what it is we meet every week and we talk about relationships. We learn a little bit about what abusive relationships are, what healthy relationships look like. We talk about power and control and oppression in society. And basically it's kind of just a joining of young, youthful minds. The reason that we started this program is to make sure that we prevent violence at basically every core level. And one of the ways that has been shown to prevent violence is by talking to young folks about the importance of healthy relationships and about violence prevention. So the goal is that if we educate our young folks, they'll go out and they'll talk to their friends, their peers, their community, and encourage violence prevention from their part. So not only are we actually directly working with young folks to prevent violence, we're also kind of working within a network, within a community of young folk to help prevent violence in the future and to make sure that everyone knows that healthy relationships are important. Nobody deserves to be hurt. Nobody deserves to be abused. Our relationships are supposed to be something that people look forward to, that people enjoy, and they're not supposed to be something where you get hurt in them. The reason that we're kind of having these young folk on today is that February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. In the state of Texas, 1 in 3 teens, Texas teens will experience some kind of violence before they turn the age of 20. So 1 in 3 Texas teens from the ages 13 to 19 will experience some kind of physical, emotional, verbal, or sexual violence by someone that they're dating or someone that they have dated in the past. And those numbers are huge. That's 33% of all teenagers, and that's a really big number. And of course, just like with adults, relationship violence among young folks is still not okay and still doesn't deserve to happen. So this kind of group today, we're going to be talking about some stuff related to abusive relationships, but also healthy relationships, and then how we can help our friends in the community, how we can help our peers in the community. If you're interested at all in learning more about the Youth Ambassador Program, you can put a comment in chat and we'll get a hold of you later. It's a really great group. I have some awesome friends who are with me today, and so hopefully you'll kind of learn a little bit more about what we're about. We also have a brand new Instagram. It's at DCFOF Youth. So it's at our normal Instagram account, DCFOF, and then just add the word youth at the end of it. They'll put that in chat as well. Feel free to look up on that, join us, learn some more about relationship violence, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to make sure that we introduce our young folks with you today so you can learn a little bit more about them and get to know who they are. So let's start with Mariela. Mariela, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Mariela, and I am 22 years of age, and I am a senior at UNT. My major is Human Development Family Sciences, and I'm minoring in Spanish as well.
Beautiful. Nice. Alexa, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Alexa. I am 20. I'm a student at the University of North Texas, and I am also studying Human Development and Family Sciences.
Perfect. Marilyn, you want to go?
Okay, my name is Marilyn. I go to the University of North Texas, and I'm majoring in psychology.
Perfect. Daisy?
Hi, I'm Daisy. I'm a undergraduate student, psychology undergraduate student at Texas Women's University, and I'm 21.
And then finally,
hi everyone, I'm Kush, and I'm also a student at Texas Women's University, and I'm majoring in psychology.
Perfect. So this incidentally or accidentally turned out to be College Student Day, just because of when timing happens. Young high schoolers are still in high school, so today you're going to meet some of our college folks and learn a little bit more about them and what they think. So let's kind of like start off right off the bat. So whenever we talk about abusive relationships, we're talking about certain things. So how would some of y'all define abuse? What does that word mean to you? And feel free to just jump in as you want to. What are we talking about when we say abuse?
Do I jump in? Okay, cool. So whenever I just think of abuse, it can be anything that is just not wanted, as in emotional, physical, verbal. Is just any type of really just hurting your personal beliefs and values as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so kind of that like verbal, emotional part, which you said. Alexa, you were gonna go?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say, like, I think prior to kind of like learning with y'all and educating myself, I definitely would have said that abuse was like just physical. So it would be like, oh, like if someone's abusing you, like they're probably hitting you or like they're doing something physical to you. But yeah, it's so much broader than that. And it can be a number of other things that don't involve like physical touch or leaving marks on somebody else.
Abuse is just anything that is like, it can be violent, it can controlling behaviors, and also physical too.
Mhm. Yeah, so when we talk about abuse, we kind of talk about this like intentional pattern of behavior, right? This power and control dynamic where someone takes power and control away from somebody else through different ways. And so a couple of y'all said like verbal and emotional. It's not just that physical or sexual stuff that we can more easily identify. It's some of that like covert, maybe not as noticeable things. So I know like Marilyn said, like, it's that controlling part. What are some other maybe like covert forms of abuse that somebody might not immediately like think of like, oh, this is abusive?
I would say trying to like control your time and control who you're going to be around and who you're allowed to like speak to and like, you know, hang out with.
Mhm.
It
Okay.
also includes like jealousy, like it's excessive.
Mhm. So like controlling somebody, so like jealousy, anything else that like we can think of that might be a more subtle form of abuse?
I would say just like checking up on someone, so like looking at their social media constantly, monitoring their activity, wanting to look at somebody's text messages to make sure that they're not talking about someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I would say also like when it's like gaslighting, whenever someone's
Mm-hmm.
joking around and they're trying to play it off that it's not actual facts and it is, and they're trying to make you feel bad about it.
Yeah. So that gaslighting, like making somebody question what they're actually feeling or what they're actually perceiving or thinking, right? So like playing mind games almost, that kind of gaslighting that we know about. Yeah. So I know in our meetings a couple weeks ago, we talked about toxic relationships. And so I'll just be clear. I am a 26-year-old adult. I'm not like that super, I'm not like middle-aged yet, but I'm getting up there, right? And so one of the words I commonly hear thrown about amongst our younger population is this phrase toxic relationships. And so I know y'all aren't like representative of everybody ages 15 to 21, but for y'all, when you hear that word toxic relationship, what are some things that come to mind?
For me, it's someone that is too clingy and doesn't give you your space.
Hmm.
I think it can be like a number of things. And it's very subjective. So like for some people, there are some sorts of relationships that work. And for other people, they need more space or time apart, or they don't want that constant stream of communication. So I think the definition of a toxic relationship would depend upon the people involved in the relationship. And so you would have to ask them like what their boundaries are. So it's like a breaking of somebody's boundaries and breaking their trust or not respecting what they want out of the relationship.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so like whenever I think of a toxic relationship, is just knowing what is wrong within the relationship and it's just an unhealthy cycle.
Mhm.
Not really doing go out of way to fix what's going on.
Okay.
It sounds like the term fun sounds kind of weird, but like the relationship isn't fun. Like you're not enjoying yourself. Like it's not a majority like good time, you know, like you're stressing out about things and you have to kind of walk on eggshells in certain situations. Like it's not a fun relationship. You're not enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely agreed on that. I think that's a good definition, like, especially when you're, 18 to 22, like you should be having fun when you're dating or when you're like forming friendships. It should be a good time. Like you shouldn't feel uncomfortable in the relationships that you're putting yourself in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. One of the things that like when we talk to, especially like middle schoolers, as we kind of say, your relationship like shouldn't change your life too much at this point. Like they shouldn't be something that completely just turns it and flips it over and now you're scheduling your time around that person. Like it should just be someone that you also spend time with and that you like have fun with and that you enjoy being around. So toxic relationships, it seems kind of from y'all's perspective, and again, just as Alexa said, it's kind of a subjective word. While abuse, we can kind of more easily identify like that's not okay. It's a power and control thing. It seems like toxic is a little bit more like unclear. It's not as like specific and specified. And so one of the things that I was like thinking about when I was trying to like understand what is toxic relationships, as I was thinking of a spectrum. And so like on a spectrum, we'd have like healthy relationships, like where there's good communication, and we'll talk about those things later. And then there's abusive relationships where it's just, this is a clear power and control dynamic. Somebody's being hurt verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, not okay. Where would toxic relationships, the phrase that we kind of talked about, where would that go in this spectrum of like healthy versus unhealthy abusive? Where do y'all think it would go?
I think maybe in the middle. I think being in a toxic relationship is kind of like a stepping stone to being in like a abusive, manipulative situation. So like I said, it depends, but I guess for me, the way that I would define it, it would be like, okay, like you would maybe start and things would be okay. And then sort of some of those little smaller things start adding up. So maybe they're constantly texting you, they want to know where you're at. They're checking your social media, they want your location. You have to ask them for permission to do things. And so it's like that, and then it just escalates and becomes like a full-fledged abusive relationship.
Yeah, okay, so it kind of fits somewhere midpoint or so. And so you use the word escalates, and that's kind of something that we often see in abusive relationships, that abuse will escalate or get more severe or get more frequent or get more harmful and dangerous over time. So it seems like kind of what you're saying, Alexa, is that toxic relationships are kind of that like, not like necessarily starting point, but that point where there might be some stuff that just doesn't seem right. Like it's a
like
stop along the way to abuse.
Like a gut feeling. So like you might be dating someone and then just things like in your gut, you just start feeling like, this might not be right. So maybe you'd go to your friends and you'd be like, oh, my significant other like got kind of jealous when I told him I was hanging out with a group of people without him. Like just stuff that kind of makes you stop and think like, ooh, like something about that is a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay, so that kind of brings to mind like red flags, those relationship, little things that kind of happen that seem to be kind of like those gut feeling warning signs. What are some red flags that might occur around this like toxic relationship period? What do y'all think?
I think one that's very important is just like whenever you're talking to someone and they might be joking, but to you it's not joking, and they might be saying, oh, you're just being so sensitive right now. And I just take a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like what Marilyn was saying about that kind of gaslighting, like that diminishing someone's feelings or like not making them doubt themselves, like, oh, you're just being sensitive today. Okay, what else?
I was gonna kind of go on the same route of gaslighting, but in the sense of like, everything is your fault. Even if like the other person like did something wrong, it was your fault that you're upset about it. Like, oh, I'm sorry that you feel hurt about like that I did that. Like that's so it's a weird manipulative thing that takes a minute for you to kind of like realize, but it's not okay.
Yeah, one of those like perfect examples of a bad apology. I'm sorry that you felt X, Y, or Z. Like that's not an apology. That's saying that it's your fault for feeling bad.
To
What
add on
else?
is like, I'm sorry.
No, you're
To
good.
add
Go
on
ahead.
is like, you like communicate what you want out of the relationship, and they're not listening to you, and they continue to make the same mistake, and you like forgive them, and then you go back to them because you know you're giving them a second chance, but then that becomes a cycle. Like they never do anything.
Mhm. So then like even knowing you don't like this or that's not something that you want, they keep continually doing that even though you're like, I've said this before, like I don't like that or I don't want that.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. Like they kind of begin to push your boundaries a little bit. It's like one example that I've thought about or I've talked about with other people before is like if somebody were to be like touching you or tickling you and you were like, hey, stop that. I'm not like, it's not funny. And they continued to do it anyways.
Mhm.
And like they're just testing your, let's see, if you're like still gonna stay with me and you don't leave me, then I have this power over you. You know, I can go over those boundaries. You can be mad for a minute, but you're still with me. So that's, feel like that's the mentality that goes through their heads.
Yeah,
Another-
I can do this stuff because I can and I want to. I'm gonna do it and there's not gonna be consequences for me. That kind of whole mentality. Go ahead, Alexa.
Another big one for me is like people begin to kind of like guilt trip you. So maybe it's like, oh, you always want to spend time with your friends. You never make time for me anymore.
Yeah, so that like that emotional playing with your like mind, playing with your feelings, trying to make you feel bad for being a human being and having friends and having your own life. Like we get to have our own lives just because we're dating someone or we like someone doesn't mean that we now like are fused together at the hip. Like y'all can be separate people, but also together. So why is boundary crossing? Why is that like a little bit of a warning sign or a little bit of a red flag? Like why is that maybe not so great in a relationship?
I think boundary crossing is like super important. I was going to mention that too. Like, I feel like that just shows a complete lack of respect for you. Like, if you explicitly tell them your boundaries and you tell them what you like and don't like and all of that, and they still do it anyways, like, that's just a clear sign of like disrespect. Like, they're not respecting your wants and needs. And like, it's not a healthy like path to be on because then they're gonna, it could lead to them not respecting other boundaries and things that are more important.
So like that escalation, like it starts small, but then it starts to become like more bigger or more severe or more frequent.
Yeah.
Chris, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, listening to everyone, I think that's really important, especially when you have, I think boundaries is kind of tricky because I think everyone wants what they want in a relationship. So I think it's important to be on the same page, whenever you're dating someone, to know that you guys both want the same things. And I think when that kind of gets off balance, it can lead to, toxicity in the relationship. And then if like there is a boundary cross and there's no like apologizing or, like trying to make the situation better, I think that's a sign too that, okay, there's that respect missing, like Daisy said.
Yeah, that's a great point because I think we can cross boundaries on accident. Like it's not okay to do that, but like everyone's going to do that at some point. But it's kind of how you handle it. It's how you rectify that situation. So apologizing, trying to make it up to them, and then not doing it again. Most importantly, that not doing it again piece. And so that's going to happen in kind of all relationships where there's going to be some kind of boundary crossing. But the difference between like a healthy way to solve that boundary crossing versus an unhealthy way, which is either blaming them or refusing to acknowledge it, or even like doing it again, even though you know that that person doesn't like whatever that boundary might be crossed. So in general, like I'm not asking you all to speak for every single young person. Do y'all think that young folks talk to their partners about what they want or what they don't want in a relationship? What does that look like? Or if it looks like anything, what does that look like?
I feel like in the talking period, or the dating part first, it's all like in my experience it is talked about, and I'm very transparent about what I want, because if I'm putting my time into this, then I want to feel right.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like younger people, and when I was younger, it wasn't something I really thought about because I was just kind of like, oh, we're dating, we're on the same page already, kind of
Mhm.
deal. Like I didn't think it was something I had to explicitly like talk about until those boundaries started being crossed. And I was like, oh, hold on, I'm not cool with that. And then, I would kind of express those. Now that I'm older, it's off the bat. Like I think this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Daisy, as well. It's just, well, from my personal experience as well, which is it's very easy to forget to just not even talk about and address your own boundaries and what you want and you expect in that relationship, just because you are in that talking period. You're like, you're more caught up in the sense of just wanting to be with that person instead of finding out if that person is right for you from the beginning.
Mhm.
But now that I'm just getting older, I'm just realizing it is important to just address everything that you're wanting from that partner at the beginning. And if, for instance, if you do cross that boundary, which eventually you might, it's just talking about it and addressing it. Hey, like this wasn't cool, or something just simply within those lines. Because if you don't, then that's when it will convert more into a control and abusive relationship.
Okay.
I would also say that, like, thinking about young people, I think that communication takes experience and take time, because I think, like what Daisy and Mariella was saying was, it kind of something you learn over time. So I think for a lot of young people, they just like are in relationships, and it's not something that may just come up unless they, I guess, go through that, okay, I have to talk about this, because I think it's not something that we, I guess, just naturally talk about. I think it takes practice and it takes time.
Yeah, I really love that you said that, Kush. One of the ways in which Dedicated Friends of the Family in our prevention education programs is we try and give young kids, especially like even like in pre-K, we start giving them skills of being able to talk about what's going on with them, so that becomes something that they're comfortable doing. It normalizes that experience of talking to somebody about your feelings, talking to someone when something isn't right, we want to make sure that violence is prevented. And one of the ways we can do that is making sure that we feel comfortable communicating with our partner. And I think one of the biggest red flags that I always go back to is if you ever feel like uncomfortable talking to your partner, like scared, fearful, that for me is like that number one big red flag. Sometimes you might not feel like, oh, I want to have this conversation, I'm so excited to have this conversation. But if you're scared to talk to them, if there's something like that makes you worried or fearful, that to me kind of is like that big red flag right there. So how can we talk to our partners about boundaries? What's a way that we can do that? How can that happen?
I think like the best piece of advice is to do it right off the bat. Like, do not get invested into a relationship and then bring up boundaries. It should be something that you are communicating just immediately. As soon as it comes up, you should be explaining it. Or as soon as like you know that this is a person that you're interested in, seeing more, you should say, hey, here are my expectations and I'm just wondering what yours are. Because for me, I just would rather like find that out at the get-go, and then if they don't align, cut my losses, than be 6 months into a relationship and have to be like, I actually don't like it when you do this, because then you just have to endure like 6 months of feeling uncomfortable.
And
Yeah.
I agree with that. And to add on, it's just like if you say it like later on the relationship, there will be like, why did you mention this before? I thought I was good, and it just causes more problems that could have been fixed at the beginning.
As well as like people change and they evolve, so it's always, your boundaries are going to change eventually as well. So like for instance, if there's a couple and they've already been in the relationship for more than 6 months or just any time frame, it's important to just say like, hey, like it might be uncomfortable and like just weird to talk about it at the beginning, just saying, hey, like let's take a day and let's just think about our boundaries, write them down, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I know it sounds so silly to even do because I've done that. But it's so important because you actually value what they need and what they want out of the relationship, and it just makes you as a couple so much stronger.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like it's kind of like maybe not necessarily, it's like a tell in a way. It's like, if you bring up boundaries and they're already dismissive and already kind of blowing them off like okay, like that's super weird that you're talking about it. Like I feel like that kind of maybe be a good tell. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that that relationship's gonna go badly, but it just might something to be like aware of. If they're really dismissive right off the bat, then that might kind of say something about what they think about relationships or what they think about boundaries and the importance of them. And I like that Mariella said that, boundaries are going to change. The more comfortable you get with somebody in a relationship, your boundaries might change a little bit, and that's okay. But the important thing is that we feel comfortable, or at least we feel like we can talk to them about it when we want to. Anyone else got anything to add about boundaries? So we talked a little bit about like relationship red flags. And so we talked about like boundary crossing and like jealousy, kind of this controlling, like who you're with, or like trying to like tell you what you can and can't do. What are some other red flags that might pop up like in a relationship that might be like a, hey, slow down, check this out, how do you feel about it kind of thing?
Maybe like spending time together, how much time you're going to spend together. I feel like there's, like being clingy or whatever. And sure, like when you're in a relationship with someone, you want to spend time with them, but you also have to gauge like how much time do I need for myself to recharge, to, spend time with my friends, with my family, without the other person there. And so when you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't respect that, who wants all of your time, all of your attention, all the time, that can be a huge red flag, and also like just a very scary situation to be.
I was gonna say the exact same thing, isolating you from your friends and your family. Like if they are getting upset that you want to hang out with like your siblings by yourself and not go to their house, like that's not okay. You should be able to have your own life and them not be upset at you for it.
Yeah, so that y'all, a couple of y'all had said the word clingy. What is clingy? What do y'all, what for you, what is clingy?
It's just not giving you your space, trying to hang out all the time. If you want to work on like maybe schoolwork, they want to hang out and go bowling or something. And that's mine.
Okay, so it's like wanting to spend like so much, like is that over, like too much? What are you gonna say, Daisy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of like on a spectrum of what you're comfortable with, like how comfortable you are with spending this amount of time with them. Like I can spend like me and my partner, we are both comfortable spending a certain amount of time together, and then we're both very clear, like I want to go home and chill out. And like that's cool. That's normal. Like we're both cool with that. If I were to say I want to go home and like take a minute to recharge and they were upset at me for it, that would be like they're too much. Like that's too much for me. Like you should, there should be a respect that I need my time to chill out.
I also wanted to say that for me, I'm not a big texter. So I have set that out like to my boyfriend, right? That I'm gonna text you like maybe in the morning, but then throughout the day I need to focus on my schoolwork and like work, and that's been very apparent. So, and there hasn't been any issues.
Yeah, so you kind of set that boundary kind of like up, like, I'm not a big texter, like I like to be able to focus on school, something that's really important to me. And so I may not be like blowing up your phone or texting you back a lot when I'm in class or like studying or trying to do work. Yeah. So you kind of set that boundary ahead of time just so they can know what's okay with you and what's not okay with you and how you might respond to something. So clingy, it sounds like, is just kind of like past that point of like, now you're kind of crossing that boundary a little bit. Now you're not respecting my time alone or my desire to be by myself, or at least not with you at this moment. So clingy, it sounds like, is part of that maybe like toxic relationship. So kind of this warning sign, red flaggy zone. If someone's really clingy, that might be a little bit of a red flag. Especially, again, it's like, especially if they like then dismiss your feelings and blame you. It's like, well, why are you getting upset about it? I thought we were dating. All of that kind of stuff that they blame and make it your fault instead of their responsibility for their own actions. So kind of talk about toxic relationships. So then what are some qualities of like a good, healthy relationship? What are some like what we call green flags that relationship is going well? What do those look like?
Being the cheerleader, having someone that like cheers you up for any successes. You get a new job and they're happy for you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who makes you feel good about yourself. So when you're with them, you are just happy and content to be there.
Exactly what I was gonna say. You feel good, like it's it's a more positive experience than it is a negative experience when you're with them and when you're talking to them. Like you feel happy.
Mm-hmm. So it's like what y'all were saying, like toxic relationships just aren't fun. Like they're just draining. They're emotionally just kind of like, but with a happy relationship, or a good relationship or a non-abusive relationship, you leave feeling like better. Like as Marilyn said, it's like like a cheerleader. You feel supported and cared for and respected and valued. What else are some qualities of like a good non-abusive healthy relationship?
I would also say that the person speaks to your love language, since everyone has different ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
Respect. So if you say something, they respect that as your answer. They treat you respectfully. They don't try and get you to do things that you don't want to do.
I think it just looks completely different to every person. I think it's just like how you have your own list of boundaries. You can also have a list of something that you want in a partner. But it can be like, I want them to enjoy my presence around my family, just because when you do, sometimes whenever there's a marriage, you marry the whole family, the whole saying.
Mm-hmm.
It can look like as in opening the door for me, or like if it's a teen relationship, it's just coming to my front door and greeting my family.
Mm-hmm.
Or simple little things that is just not making you question what they're doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Just giving you reassurance that you are.
I was also going to say, like, along the same lines of what you were saying earlier, Sarah, was like, if you feel comfortable to go to them and talk to them about your feelings and not feeling like you're going to be judged or they're going to like dismiss your feelings, that should be somebody that you should want to go to, feel comfortable going to, especially as the relationship progresses and you get, closer, hopefully closer to them.
I was thinking the exact same thing, Kush. Just a good, healthy stream of communication. Like you can talk to them and you can voice like problems and concerns and it not turn sour. Like it's not going to be a bad thing. You're not scared or nervous to talk to them about certain things because you already know they're going to be cool. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, so it's like almost like the exact opposite of like those things that we talk about like in abusive relationships. It's the literally like exact opposite. Like you feel valued, you feel you can trust them, you feel that respect. Communication is open and you can talk back and forth about what you want, what you don't want, where your boundaries are when you're feeling upset. It's that closeness in a relationship. It's that vulnerability where both people are able to be vulnerable and talk about things that maybe they wouldn't normally talk to like their friends about. It's that closeness, it's that connection, I guess we could say. So, and this is kind of like going back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier. So when it comes to talking about feelings, is that something that and we kind of talked about when we talked about boundaries, but is that something that young folks are like doing with each other? Like they're talking about their feelings in an open way, or is that still what does that look like? Yes, that's what I'm asking.
I think it depends. I'm not super fantastic about talking about feelings. So it's like scary. It's very, very scary. And I think like, especially as a young person, it can be really intimidating to kind of put yourself out there like that. Because, you know, like obviously like I'm 20, like I deal with self-image and like, you know, self-esteem and body image and stuff like that. So I just kind of sometimes will save myself the trouble and just stay a little bit quiet. So it's hard. It's definitely hard. And I don't think that I'm alone, like in feeling that way.
I think
That was gonna be quick. I was just thinking the same. It was everybody is different, but as well as if you are with someone who is not that great at expressing themselves, I think it's important to not make them feel pressured that they have to. And sometimes it's like they cannot verbally express their emotions, but maybe they can in a different way. So it's just important to know that that your partner does.
I was just gonna say, I think it takes a lot of like growing on yourself and in the relationship to learn how y'all can like properly communicate. Because like she was saying, not everyone's gonna communicate like verbally exactly like here's exactly what I feel, because it's not everyone's strong suit. But like maybe like take a minute, write it down, let's get back to it kind of deal. Like that's something I found that helps a lot. Like, you know, learning how to I don't know, like just yourself, I guess, grow yourself and like learning how you need to communicate.
I also think that's another like green flag too, if you guys are both wanting to work on that communication.
Yeah,
I was
because
gonna say,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Marilyn. You're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it does depend on, you know, like the previous relationships you've had, like friendships or whatever, and also your family, the way that they communicate at home. Because for me, we speak a lot about our feelings, but I know for sure that other people, like my friends, they don't talk to me about their feelings, but there are issues. But we talk about it, and just like Daisy said, it's just although we have different ways of communicating, we try to meet in the middle.
Yeah, and like that's like, you know, of course, when we talk about like communication, like all relationships are going to have some kind of communication problem. Like that's inevitable. As people with different minds and different wants and experiences, there's always going to be some kind of conflict. And of course, when we talk about abuse, abuse isn't just a communication problem. Abuse is somebody doing something with like the goal, with the intention to hurt somebody else in some form, whether that be physical, verbal, sexually, or emotional. So communication problems aren't just like, that doesn't mean abuse is happening. That doesn't mean the relationship is doomed. It doesn't mean that like things are going downhill real quick. But healthy relationships require like work, and they require putting in that effort to say, you know what, I want a healthy, good relationship. And so how can we do this together? How can we work on this together? Which is why I really like what Marilyn said is, you know, like working on it together. And as Kush said, like kind of figuring out how can you make this work together. So, one of the things that we kind of spend some time talking about in like our groups that we meet on Mondays and Sundays is we talk about how can we help those around us who might be experiencing either like a toxic or abusive relationship. How can we help them if they come to us and say, hey, this thing is happening to me? What can we do?
I think the first thing is to listen and just like not really form judgments, because I think if you go to someone and then they kind of make all these judgments, you kind of question the relationship, and it becomes this like, you know, you kind of lose focus. So I think you need somebody who you can trust and will give you like unbiased advice, because it's hard when you go to someone and they're only hearing your side, you know, they're not hearing the other person's side. So I think it's important to have somebody who you know, who you're close with, who can help you, and then look at your side and then the other person's side and try and help you like reach some kind of middle ground.
And it's just voicing your concern for your friend, as in like, hey, like I'm here for you ever need to talk,
Mhm.
or you can just text me anytime, and not necessarily like making demands for them, saying like, hey, you need to go to therapy, or you need to break up with him now, like he's not good for you, or she's not good, or whatever it is. As well as just knowing how you can help them get the resources that they want or maybe needing, but not necessarily just, hey, like this is what it is. And
Mhm.
just like sometimes it can be a lot for you just to hear it. So it's just important to say like, hey, I don't feel comfortable you sharing with me, but maybe she might be, or something
Mhm.
else, because
Mhm.
hearing about it can be very overwhelming too.
Mhm. Yeah, so like knowing what you're comfortable with, like as the friend, knowing what you're comfortable with and hearing, and helping them get in touch with that person, or talk to somebody who can hear them and who can help them out and make sure that they get the things they need. And I like to kind of what Kush was saying about this, non-judgmental listening part. I think each and every one of us can probably think of a time where we went to someone with a problem and they instantly tried to solve it for us, and it's like, no, I didn't want you to, like, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. And so being that friend who they can sit and talk with, and even if you may not have the right answer or like know how to solve it, I think being there with them at that time can be enough sometimes. Like, you don't have to have the perfect thing to say. Sometimes just being in that company can be really validating. So why,
Can
or
I?
Marilyn, go ahead.
Sorry.
You're
I
good.
feel like you do listen, but you don't give your opinion. You don't make the decision for them.
Mhm.
And that's like an important thing.
Yeah, I was just literally, that's a great segue. I was just about to ask, why shouldn't we like sell someone like, oh, this is what you should do. You should break up with them. You should X, Y, or Z. Why might that not be the best decision for us as a friend helping somebody? Why might that not be helpful?
I feel like that's super kind of overwhelming on the person who's talking. Like just an automatic, like, you need to break up with them. They're bad for you. It's like, oh, okay. Like I was just telling you like what's going on, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
they might not realize how serious it is and how, hardcore the situation might be, and you coming off and like giving these really serious like pieces of advice might be like jarring to the person, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my god, and it might cause them to shut down and not want to talk to you about it anymore,
Mhm.
because you're like, oh, okay, like you're gonna, especially if they have their partner telling them opposite things, it's gonna
Mhm.
just really confusing and overwhelming for the person if you give them such serious, like hardcore advice.
Mhm.
I feel like people they're telling you because they're comfortable, but they aren't sure. That's the reason that they're telling you. They're unsure of what to do, and they are like there's this connection between the two people, and they haven't realized that they need to be cut off. But it's up to them. If not, like if they do end the relationship because you told them, they're gonna maybe go back to them because was not the correct reason. My friend told me to break up, but I really wanted to be with him
Mhm.
or her.
I'll say, especially like as a young person, I'm very stubborn. So if I were in that situation and somebody was like, oh, break up with them, I would not do it. I wouldn't do it because I wouldn't want somebody else to be right. Like I would want to come to that realization on my own. And like just having been in experiences where I've like, dated people or talked to people, and just when my mom was like, Alexa, like, come on, and I wouldn't take her advice, and it had to come from me. So I think just being like a listening ear, like somebody to kind of just be there to listen, is just like one of the biggest steps. And like you can provide advice, but making like demands or telling someone what they shouldn't do only dissuades them from making the best decision for themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like that's like it's whenever I think of like someone like making those demands, I think I go right back to that kind of what that abuser's doing. I'm not saying that the friend's being abusive, but it's not like telling you this is what you should and shouldn't do. It's kind of doing that same thing, like it's making decisions for somebody else that you don't necessarily have the right to make. And like we might have an opinion, but that might not be what our friend wants from us at that moment. They might just want someone to listen to. And then of course, if they say like, I'm not sure like what I can do, then maybe you can say, hey, Denton County Friends of the Family, the counselor at school, a counseling service, like, and then you can maybe offer them some like alternatives. You could go to X, Y, or Z person. But I think kind of having that non-judgmental, listening to them, validating their experiences. So like, I believe you. It's not your fault. You didn't deserve that. All of those things that, of course, are true when it comes to abuse in relationships. I think it's also really important to let them know that, you know, I'm a safe person that you can come talk to. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to dismiss what you're feeling. I'm going to believe you and I'm going to validate you and make you feel safe and comfortable, which is the exact opposite of what their abusive partner might be doing. So to kind of finish off, we have a couple more minutes left. We talked about what abuse is. We've talked about toxic relationships. We've talked about green flags. We've talked about red flags and how we can help. I know we're going to briefly touch on the subject, and maybe we could have talked about this earlier, but is there a difference between like toxic dating relationships and toxic friendships? So let's say maybe somebody's not dating. It can a friend relationship be like toxic in this kind of sense?
I think definitely. And like some of the toxic behaviors are not like limited to being like in a romantic relationship. So friends can be very demanding of your time too, and want, like there have been instances, I know people who have had friends who have said like, oh, I was, you know, hanging out with this person and she was my friend and she told me that I was the only person that she could be friends with or whatever. And then also like, you know, wanting your social media passwords. I feel like that could also be like checking up, like using, you know, location services to like track where people are. That could definitely be, you know, in a friendship.
I think the same exact thing for sure. It can go in the same like manipulative sense, like, you know, everything is your fault again, like all the problems are your fault and you need to fix them now. Like it can definitely be like relationship and friendship, like toxicity can be like very, very similar.
As well, it's just a lot more, I think, difficult whenever you do have those friendships like during middle school, high school, because you just don't want to lose them because that's all you really know. And then once you go to college, you discover a whole other world out there. So yeah, I mean, both of them, they're both abusive just because they both want control. Like, yeah, like they might want to like check your social media platforms and everything. And they could say, oh, I just love you. I care about you. I just want to check what's going on. But they're overstepping your boundaries.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key. Like if you feel like they're overstepping your boundaries, you know, that's kind of not good, especially as a friend, you know. Because I know there are strong friendships out there where, you know, there is kind of a tight-knit, you know, relationship, but I think both people in the relationship need to know their boundaries and how much influence they're going to have in each other's lives. I think that's important.
Yeah, so it seems like a lot of those same kind of like red flags for relationships, like dating relationships, can easily exist for friend relationships too. It doesn't mean like that they're mutually exclusive and they look completely different. A lot of them seem to be really similar. And as Mariela said, like abuse can come from a friend too. It's not just someone that you're dating. And I think sometimes people don't think about that, like when it comes to friendships, because like, this is my friend, they must care about me. But friends can be really harmful too. And sometimes they're the people that we might least expect it from because we feel like we know them so well and we feel like we should be able to trust them, which we should be able to. But of course, that doesn't always work out like that. So we're going to kind of wrap it up. So as young folks, let's say that somebody, let's say like a teenager, let's say like a high school or a middle schooler is experiencing some kind of abusive relationship. What should they do? Or who should they go to if they're experiencing some kind of bad, abusive, toxic relationship?
An adult that they trust, whether that be like their family, a teacher, a counselor at school, just somebody a little bit older than they are who can provide them with some guidance.
I just personally, like just based on how I was back then, my mentality, I wouldn't want to necessarily reach out to an adult or to anybody but a friend. And I know like just for any kind of family, we do have a hotline, but like just even talking to them like that can be scary. So maybe telling like there's an alternative in texting the hotline, which we do have, it's a lot better for them just because they feel like they don't see them face to face, so they feel a lot more safe.
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of the new features of our hotline. You can call it, but you can also text it. So in case you don't want to like talk on the phone, you don't want to like, get too far into a conversation, you can text, and that's okay too, right? It all just matters is that you're going to someone that you trust and that is safe and that can help you. And so even if that person's a counselor at school, a parent, someone at home, a teacher that you really like, a coach that you really like, going to someone and talking about it, because obviously you don't deserve to be hurt in any sense of the word. It's not something that you have to go through to learn from. It's not something that like you asked for. It's not something that you should have to experience. Abuse is not okay at the end of the day in any way, shape, or form. We all deserve to be happy and healthy and be in relationships where we feel valued, support, and trusted and cared for. So I want to thank you all so much for being with me here today. I really appreciate it. Y'all are some of the most awesome young folks that I know, and I'm so glad that I get to work with y'all each week and learn more about you. And basically, that I get, I like having a chance to talk to y'all each week because it makes me feel like I just feel like warm after our meetings. I always feel kind of good. I'm like, yeah, that was a great meeting. We talked about some good stuff today. So I want to thank y'all so much for being with me here today. Mariella, Alexa, Daisy, Kush, Marilyn, I want to thank y'all so much. I really appreciate your time here today, and I appreciate you, the audiences, spending some time with us today. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to DCFOF and we'll get back to you and respond to you. Check out our Instagrams, check out our other social media pages to learn more about upcoming events and anything new that's happening. I look forward to talking with y'all later this week, my youth ambassadors, and look forward to talking with the community if y'all have any questions. So I really appreciate it. And I want to thank y'all. So everyone, I appreciate it, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.